Chapter 4 Constantinople. After a week, while the king was in council, he remembered a letter the Emperor of Constantinople had sent to him, telling about certain troubles. He summoned Trnt and had it read in his presence, and it said the following: "We, Frederick, Emperor of the Empire of Greece, by the immense and divine majesty of the sovereign and eternal God, extend health and honor to you, King of the great and abundant island of Sicily. By the pact made by our ancestors, sealed, signed, and sworn by you and me, and by you and by me through our ambassadors, we do notify your royal personage that the Sultan, the Moorish renegade, is inside our empire with a great army, and in his company is the Grand Turk. They have overpowered a large part of our realm, and we have been unable to lend assistance, for because of my old age I cannot bear arms. After the great loss we have suffered of cities, towns, and castles, the dearest possessions I had in this world was killed, my firstborn son, who was my consolation and a guardian of the holy Catholic faith, doing battle against the infidel to his great honor and glory and to mine. And, as a greater misfortune, he was killed by his own men. That sad, painful day was the perdition of the imperial house and of my honor. It is known to me and is common knowledge that in your court you have a valiant knight whose name is Trnt Blnc. He belongs to the brotherhood of that singular order of chivalry said to be founded on that glorious saint, the father of chivalry, St. George, on the island of England. Many singular acts worthy of great honor are told about this knight, and are celebrated throughout the world, and they are the reason we ask you to beg him on your behalf and mine to come to give to my service, for I shall give him all my possessions he may desire. And if he will not come, I pray divine justice to make him suffer my pain. O blessed King of Sicily, as you are crowned king, have pity on my pain, so that the immense goodness of God will keep you from a similar situation, for we are all subject to the wheel of fortune, and there is no one who can detain it." When the emperor's letter was finished, Trnt had heard it, the king said, "You should thank Almighty God, Trnt, my brother, for he has given you such a perfection that your name reigns throughout the world. I place my trust in your generosity, and so I dare to beg on your behalf of the Emperor of Constantinople and myself. And if my pleas have no effect on you, at least have pity on that unfortunate emperor, so that he will not lose his imperial throne." When the king had said this, Trnt replied, "If your majesty commands me to go serve that prosperous emperor who reigns in Greece, I will do it because of the great love I hold for your highness. But, sire, I can only do as much as a man can do. That is plain to God and to the whole world. And I am even more astonished at the great emperor, who has passed over all the excellent kings, dukes, counts, and marquises in the world, who are more knowledgeable and more valiant than I am in the art of chivalry, that he should pass over them for me." "Trnt," said the king, "I know very well that there are good knights in the world, and you should not be forgotten among them. If by chance their honor should be examined, among the emperors, kings, and expert knights, the prize, honor, and glory would be given to you as the best of them all. So I beg you as a knight to go and serve the imperial state, and advise you to do so as if you were my son." "Since your majesty commands and advises me to do this," said Trnt, "I will go." The king ordered all the galleys to be stocked with everything that they would need. And when the king told the emperor's ambassadors that Trnt was willing to go, they were the happiest men in the world, and they heartily thanked the king. As soon as the ambassadors had reached Sicily, they were ready to offer a salary to the men. They gave half a ducat each day to the crossbowmen, and a ducat to the soldiers. And since there were not enough men in Sicily, they went on to Rome and Naples, and there they found many men who accepted wages very willingly, and they also bought many horses. Trnt took his leave of the king and queen, and of Philippe and the Infantata, and with all the men on board they let a favorable wind fill the sails, and they sailed quickly over a calm sea, until one morning they found themselves before the city of Constantinople. When the emperor had heard that Trnt had arrived, he was happier than he had ever been, and he said that he felt as if his son had come back to life. As the 11 galleys neared shore, all the cries of happiness made the entire city resound. The emperor went up on a great cenotaph to watch the galleys come in. When Trant learned where the emperor was, he had 2 large flags of the king of Sicily brought out, and one of his own. He had 3 knights come out in armor, each of them with a flag in his hand, and every time they passed in front of the emperor they lowered the flags until they nearly touched the water, while Trant touched it each time. This was a sign of greeting, and because of the emperor's dignity they humbled themselves so lowly before him. When the emperor saw this, which was something that he had never seen before, he was very pleased. When Trant was on land, he found the Count of Africa waiting for him on shore with many men, and he welcomed him with great honor. They made their way to the platform where the emperor was. As soon as Trant saw him, he knelt to the ground, along with all his men, and they reached the middle of the platform they bowed again. When he was 6 feet away he knelt and tried to kiss his foot, and the worthy lord would not permit it. He kissed his hand, and the emperor kissed him on the mouth. When they had all bowed to him, Trant gave him the letter from the king of Sicily. After the emperor had read it in everyone's presence, he spoke to Trant. "This is no small happiness I feel at your arrival, virtuous knight. So that everyone will know how grateful I am to you, I am bestowing on you the imperial and general captaincy over the soldiers and over justice." He offered him a rod made of solid gold, and on its enameled head was painted the coat of arms of the empire. When Trant saw it was the emperor's will, he accepted the rod and the captaincy, and he kissed his hand. The trumpets and minstrels began to play by the order of the emperor, and they announced throughout the city by imperial proclamation how Trant Blnc had been chosen captain by command of their lord, the emperor. After all this, the emperor came down from the cenotaph to go back to the palace, and they passed by a very beautiful lodging that had been prepared for Trant and his men. The emperor said, "Captain, since we are here, go into your chambers so that you can rest a few days from the hardships you have endured at sea." "What, my lord? Do you imagine I would be so ill-mannered as to leave you? My consolation is to accompany your majesty to hell itself, and even better, to the palace." The emperor had to laugh at what Trant had said, and Trant continued, "My lord, if it please your majesty, when we are in the palace, allow me to go and pay my respects to the empress and to your beloved daughter, the Infantata." The emperor gave his consent. When they were in the palace, the emperor took him by the hand and led him to the empress's chamber. They found her in the following condition. The chamber was very dark, for there was no light at all, and the emperor said, "My lady, here is our captain who has come to pay you his respects." She replied in a very weak voice, "Very well, he is welcome." Trant said, "My lady, it is by my faith I must believe that one speaking to me is the empress." "Captain." "Captain," said the emperor, "whoever holds the captaincy of the Greek Empire has the power to open windows, and to look everyone in the face, to remove the mourning they bear for a husband, father, son, or brother." Trant asked for a lighted torch to be brought, and it was done immediately. When the light was cast on the room, the captain discovered a pavilion entirely in black. He went up to it, opened it, and saw a woman dressed in coarse cloth with a large black veil over her head that covered her entirely down to her feet. Trant removed the veil from her head so that her face was uncovered, and when he saw her face, he knelt to the ground and kissed her foot, and then her hand. She held a rosary in her hand, made of gold and enamel. She kissed it, and then had the captain kiss it. Then he saw a bed with black curtains. The Infantata was reclining on the bed, dressed in a black satin skirt, and covered with a velvet garment of the same color. A woman and a maiden were sitting at her feet on the bed. The maiden was the daughter of the Duke of Macedonia, and the woman was called Widow Repose, and she had nursed the Infantata with her own milk. In the back of the room he saw 170 women and maidens, all with the empress and the Infantata Carmesina. Trant approached the bed, made a deep bow to the Infantata, kissed her hand. Then he opened the windows, and it seemed as though all the women were coming out of a long period of captivity. They had been plunged into darkness a long while because the death of the emperor's son. Trant said, "My lord, speaking by your leave, I will tell your highness and empress my idea. I see that the people in this notable city are very sad and troubled for 2 reasons. The first is because of the loss of the prince, your son. Your majesty should not be troubled, for he died in the service of God, upholding the holy Catholic faith. Instead, you should praise and give thanks to the immense goodness of God, our Lord, because he gave him to you, and if it was his wish to take him from you, or for his own good, and he placed him in the glory of paradise. The second reason they are sad is because all the Moors are so nearby that they are afraid of losing their possessions and their lives, and as a lesser evil, that they will become captives of the infidel. That is why your Highness and the Empress must show smiling faces to everyone who sees you, to console them in their grief, so that they will gather courage to fight against the enemy. The captain's advice is good, said the Emperor. It is my wish and my command that the men, as well as women, shed their mourning immediately. While the Emperor was talking, Trnt's ears were attentive to what he was saying, but his eyes were contemplating the great beauty of Carmesina. As the windows had been closed, it was very warm, so her blouse was partly open, exposing her breasts like two apples from the Garden of Eden. They were like crystal and allowed Trnt's eyes to gain entrance, and as they remained prisoners of this free person forever, until death separated them, the Emperor took his daughter Carmesina by the hand and led her from the room. The captain took the Empress's arm, and they went into the other room, which was very nicely decorated and completely covered with works of art depicting the following love stories: Floris and Blanchefleur, Thisbe and Pyramus, Aeneas and Dido, Tristan and Isolde, Queen Guinevere and Lancelot, and many more whose loves were displayed in very subtle and artistic paintings. And Trnt said to Richard, I never thought there would be as many wondrous things on this earth as I am seeing. By this he meant more than anything the great beauty of the princess, but Richard did not understand him. Trnt took his leave of the others and went to his chambers. He entered a bedroom and put his head on a pillow at one end of the bed. It was not long before someone came to ask him if he wished to dine. Trnt said he did not, and that he had a headache. He was wounded by that passion that traps many. Deiphobus, seeing that he was not coming out, went into his room and said, Captain, please tell me what's the matter. I'd be glad to help you if I can. My cousin, said Trnt, the only thing wrong is that the sea air has left me with an ardor. Oh, Captain, are you going to keep things hidden from me? I've been the archive of all your good and bad fortune, and now you are keeping secrets from me? Tell me, I beg you, don't hide anything from me. Don't torment me even more, said Trnt. I have never felt worse illness than I do now. He turned over from shame, not daring to look at Deiphobus in the face, and no other words would come out of his mouth. I am in love. As he said this, tears flowed from his eyes. When Deiphobus saw how ashamed Trnt was, he understood why, because Trnt had always reprimanded all of his kinsmen and all of his friends on the subject of love. And as Deiphobus thought of the remedies for this illness, he said, Although you may think that it is difficult and strange to be subjugated by the yoke of love, you may be sure that no one can resist it. And so, my captain, the more intelligent a man is, the more he should hide his thoughts and not reveal the pain and anguish that are attacking his mind. When Trnt saw the good advice that Deiphobus was giving him, he got up, feeling ashamed, and they went into dinner, which was excellent because the Emperor had planned it. But Trnt could not eat. The others thought he was still feeling the ill effects of the sea, and because of his great passion, Trnt left the table and went into his room, sighing and ashamed of the confusion that was overcoming him. Deiphobus took another night, and they went to the palace, not to see the Emperor, but to see the ladies. The Emperor, who was sitting near a window, saw them passing by, and sent word for them to come up. Deiphobus and the other knights went up to the Emperor's room and found him with all the ladies. The Emperor asked what had become of their captain, and Deiphobus told him that he felt a little ill, and when he heard it, he was very concerned and told his doctors to go to him at once and see him. When they returned, the doctors told the Emperor that his illness had only been caused by the change of air. The magnanimous Emperor begged Deiphobus to tell him all about the celebrations that had taken place in England with the marriage of the king to the daughter of the King of France, and about all the knights who had jousted, and which ones had been victorious in the field. My lord, said Deiphobus, I would be very grateful if your majesty would excuse me from telling about these things. I wouldn't want your highness to think that because I'm a relative of Trnt I would favor him. I will tell you what truly happened, and as proof I have all acts signed by the king and the judges of the camp, and by many dukes, counts, marquises, kings of arms, and heralds. The emperor begged him to have them brought immediately. Deiphobus sent for them, and told the emperor extensively about all the celebrations, and he did the same about the jousts. Afterwards they read the acts and saw that Trnt had been the best of all the knights. The emperor was very pleased, and his daughter Carmenisa even more so, as were all the ladies, who were listening very attentively to all the magnificent chivalresque acts of Trnt. Afterwards they wanted to know about the wedding of the princess of Sicily, and the liberating of the Grand Master of Rhodes. When everything had been explained, the emperor held council, as he usually did, for half an hour in the morning, and 1 hour in the evening. Deiphobus wanted to go with him, but the valiant lord would not permit it, and told him, "It is well known fact that young knights have a greater desire to be with the ladies." He left, and Deiphobus stayed behind, and they spoke of many things. Princess Carmenisa begged her mother, the empress, to let them go to another room where they could enjoy themselves, since they had been inside a long while in mourning for her brother. The empress said, "My child, you may go wherever you please." They all went to the marvelous hall, built completely with brickwork, done artfully and delicately, with delicate craftsmanship. When the princess was in the hall, she drew apart from the others with Deiphobus, and they began to talk about Trnt. When Deiphobus saw that she was speaking of Trnt with such interest, he quickly said, "Take everything I say as a loyal servant, and keep it in the most secret part of your heart. It was only the fame of your highness that brought Trnt here to see you and serve you. Don't imagine, your highness, that we have come at the request of the valiant King of Sicily, or because of the letters your father the emperor sent to the King of Sicily, and your highness should not imagine that we have come to test ourselves in the exercise of arms, or because of the beauty of the land, or to see the imperial palaces. Your highness, the reason for our coming was none other than the desire to see you and to serve your majesty. And if wars and battles take place, it will all be to win your love and admiration." "Oh, wretched me!" said the princess. "What are you saying to me? Shall I grow vain, thinking that all of you have come because of love of me, and not for the love of my father?" "In faith," said Deiphobus, "on that I could swear that Trnt, our brother and lord, begged us to come with him to this land to see the daughter of the emperor, whom he desired to see more than anything in the world. And the first time his eyes rested on your highness, he was so overcome by the vision of your excellency that he took to his bed." When Deiphobus said these things to the princess, she became withdrawn, and remained deep in thought, and could not speak. She was half beside herself, her angelic face blushing, for feminine fragility had so overtaken her that she could not utter a word. At that instant the emperor arrived, and called Deiphobus, and they spoke of many things, until the emperor wished to dine. Deiphobus excused himself, approached the princess, and asked her majesty if she would like to command him to do anything. "Yes," she said, "take these embraces of mine, and keep them for yourself, and give part of them to Trnt." Deiphobus grew near to her, and did what she commanded. When Trnt heard that Deiphobus had gone to the palace, and was talking to the princess, he wanted very much for him to come back, so that he could have news of his lady. When he came into the room, Trnt got up from the bed, and said, "My good brother, what news do you bring to me of the lady who has captured my heart?" When Deiphobus saw Trnt's great love, he embraced him on behalf of his lady, and told him of their entire conversation. Then Trnt was happier than if he had been given a kingdom, and he recuperated so well that he ate well, and was happy, and longed for morning to come, so that he could go and see her.